Gary O'Neill was sacked after 16 games and just 9 points. A month later and 4 games played, Wolves have an extra 7 points because his replacement stole his system. So today we're going to look at the 3 ways Vitor Pereira changed Wolves' season. The tactics, the profiles, and a player they cannot afford to lose, because if they do, well, relegation might still be possible. See, at the beginning of the season, the Englishman started with a back 4, a change from his usual 3-4-3 system as an attempt to try and push bodies forward and be more proactive in their attacking intent. But as Wolves began the season terribly, it was a game versus Man City where they retreated to their back 3 and the system of the previous season. And they did see an uptick in form, but the damage was already done. It was clear that O'Neill not only preferred a back 4, but it was a metaphorical step forward in Wolves' development. So having to retreat back to the back 3, not only did it feel like a backward step, but a lack of direction in the club, a simple means out of a rut, which led to poor performances and ultimately Gary O'Neill getting the sack. So how did Vitor Pereira use this same system that felt like a regression but do it better? Well, the answer is in the details. Firstly, let's focus on these 3 centre-backs. Under Gary O'Neill, they would stay fairly rigid, tight together and compact centrally. But using this system, the wide fullbacks are used to spread the pitch, really utilise the width. Due to the narrowness in the centre-backs, it meant that the passing option wasn't on to reach these wide players, meaning the fullbacks often would have to retreat and get pinned back more into a 5, or the centre-backs would have to resort to playing long balls over into the wide channels, and Wolves would constantly lose possession in these wide areas. But Vitor Pereira changed this, simply in the distances and positionings. Oftentimes we'd see more of a arcing back 3, with one of the centre-backs helping out in these half spaces ever so slightly to create that passing option to circulate the ball into these wide fullbacks far more easily. And that won't be the last time we talk about these fullbacks. But firstly, I want to talk about these 2 players here, because even under Gary O'Neill in a back 4, they try and build with a 3 and a single pivot. These 4 players here being responsible for the first phase of build-up. But due to how narrow they are, they really struggle to build centrally through the middle of the pitch. And with many bodies forward, the ultimate plan of Gary O'Neill's Wolves 2.0, oftentimes they'd have to go long, and ultimately they would lose the ball in aerial and second duels. So to fix this, Vitor Pereira simply added an extra body in the deep build-up, creating a double pivot, so as the back 3 shifted in connection with their fullback, these players would sit in the pocket of the opposition to create angles to build through, or create connections with one another to allow Wolves to circulate around a team's shape. The new Wolves manager is also so aggressive in how he uses his fullbacks. Due to the security in the first phase, it allows for these wide players to push incredibly high into the last line at times, pinning the opposition's fullback. This opens up this space here, which then one of these 10s can drop into, not only again creating that connection to the wide fullback, constantly getting them in dangerous crossing positions, but also adding an extra body in this build-up, again securing the ball in how they build through the pitch. So Vitor Pereira's 3-4-3 is more aggressive and yet more controlled. But I know some of you will be thinking, well, they just lost 3-0 versus Nottingham Forest. Well, I'm going to break down that exact game at the end of the video to show you the holes in this system. But I want you to guess first as to what they are in the comments, because there is one glaringly big weakness. But I don't think you'll be able to get it until I explain the second way Vitor Pereira has changed Wolves' season. To have a successful 3-4-3, you need central control, devastating creating attacking width, and 3 comfortable centre-backs. But if we look at Gary O'Neill's last Wolves lineup, the profiles on the pitch don't feel like they match the system. Vitor Pereira instead adds a sense of consistency into his lineup, while putting players in positions they feel comfortable in. As I look at his lineup versus Spurs, we see 3 comfortable centre-backs who are comfortable in having the ball in those positions, specifically Doherty, who under Gary O'Neill was playing as that wide attacking fullback, who doesn't feel like he has the same attacking threat as a Semedo, who now under Vitor Pereira is a mainstay on that right wing spot. Again, the word consistency comes up when we talk about the double pivot, with Joao Gomes and Andre being mainstays in the midfield. 2 players who are very technically secure with the ball at their feet, being able to receive the ball from their centre-backs and then supply the men in front of them. Something that I think Gary O'Neill lacked in his lineups, with the constant selection of Mario Lemina, whose progressive carries and progressive passes are pretty bad in their statistics. And finally, to the men at the front and back of the pitch, the consistent selection of Jose Sarr will give Wolves more security in their defence, and I think taking the pressure slightly off Strand Larsen and interchanging him with Hwang will just allow to take some of that edge off the young striker, allow him to flourish in the minutes that he does get. But there is one player I've not really spoken much about today, and it's Matheus Cunha, and he's the third way Vitor Pereira has been able to turn around this Wolves side by getting the best out of this magician, because what he does you won't believe. Cunha drops into the fullback position, and after just a quick 1-2 with his number 10, he's able to progress the ball this high up the pitch. Cunha's ability to progress the ball from deep areas constantly allows Wolves to get into these 4v5 situations, and he does it in the direction of his running, constantly running across his marker so that he can't be tackled cleanly, making his progressive carries one of the most dangerous weapons in the Premier League. Vitor Pereira is getting the best out of the Portuguese, but is he relying on him too much? Because without Matheus Cunha, Wolves lost 3-0 at home to Forest, and we're going to analyse what exactly went wrong in this game and what was the glaring hole that the manager needs to fix. Without Cunha operating in the left 10, it was Hwang who had to operate in this left-hand half space, and rather than pulling wide like Cunha, Hwang doesn't have the technical and dribbling ability to carry the ball forward in these areas like we saw versus Man United. But it was still vital for Wolves to maintain the connection from the back line to the wide wing backs, and with Nottingham Forest operating in this narrow 4-4-2 with a floating number 10 in Morgan Gibbs-White, who would either join the first line of press with Chris Wood or drop in as that third midfielder centrally. Instead, Pereira used his 10s much higher up the pitch, looking to pin the opposition's fullback, trying to create the spare man out wide. And because Forest were fairly passive centrally in their press when the ball was at the back line of Wolves, it was up to the centre-backs to try and shift across to create that connection with the wide fullback using the outside centre-backs. So throughout the game, it was a battle with these 6 players here as to if the double pivots were narrow, the midfielders of Nottingham Forest would lock on to stop the ball going centrally, but oftentimes the double pivot of Wolves would drift out wide, attracting the wide winger of Forest, who usually was trying to cut out that passing lane into the wide fullback. He would be dragged inside, opening up this pass to the free man out wide. And this worked often, especially throughout the first half. Wolves had plenty of opportunities to score goals, but they went in at the break 2-0 down. And this is because of the glaring hole hidden within this system. Instead of committing numbers centrally and having this battle as to whether or not to come narrow or go wide to stop the ball travelling to the wing backs, instead he dropped a midfielder from the second line incredibly deep, almost into the back line, to deal with the number 10, especially Hwang. And that allowed the fullback of Forest to cover the wingback, go much more touch tight, which meant they have far better coverage in numbers along the back line, and of course stopping Wolves out wide limits them massively. And although Wolves had fairly settled possession in the middle third and looked to be pushing Forest backwards in the second half, in fact they were playing the away team at their own game, and Forest scored 3 counter-attacking goals, exactly what they had hoped for. But the first one shows a glaring hole in this system. If we look at this screenshot, it takes one pass to reach the free man in Morgan Gibbs-White, and Forest have an overload in numbers on the counter-attack, and it's all because of the positioning of the double pivot. A weakness in this system is you're essentially operating with 2 midfielders. Now, we've seen previously how these number 10s can drop in and help with build-up, but when you're lacking certain profiles on the pitch and these number 10s are used in other parts of the pitch, it means that these 2 central midfielders need to be incredibly smart in their positioning, and the aggressive positioning of the fullbacks means they're not going to be able to make up this distance to defend transitions. So if the ball is bypassed the 2 centrally, that means you have 3 centre-backs as your rest defence, and with some of the counter-attacking ability in this league, it could lead to massive problems in the future.